again. Where we left off last, you saw me put the texture on the wax ring. So what I did next was I put the sprue on the wax, and I'll show you what that is and what that means. But for the lost wax casting process, it allows the metal to enter the wax. So to learn more about the lost wax casting process, there's plenty of information online just to get a better visual, as it's a little bit hard to explain just verbally. But here's an example of a ring I did, and I had to put a bar here and the sprue here, so it had a place where the metal could enter, the molten metal I should say. Here's another example of a sprue. There's even an option right here where it just goes straight, depending on the design and depending on the texture. So the reason why they did this is because, as you can see, there's texture on the back, so they didn't quite want to put a sprue directly on it, which is why they did it on the inside. After I did that, I dropped it off at the caster, and what I got back was the raw casting. And so you can see here, these are the sprues that they cut off. So what's interesting is that the metal is actually kind of a matte finish. It doesn't come out shiny in the raw casting form. So here's some of the tools that I'm going to use to cut the sprue off and then polish. So what you saw before was the wax saw blade that you can buy in a bundle, but you can also get just the regular saw blade, which has really tiny serrations. And you can also buy this in a bundle. So this is what we're going to use, along with the jeweler's saw frame, which you saw before. A little bit of wax to be lubricated, and then the next step will be polishing using files. I'll also show you how to polish using a micromotor or a flex shaft. So to put the saw blade in, you have to make sure that the direction of the blades, which you can't really see, is going down. So they're facing this way. So I put it in here. And then this needs a little bit more room, so you just loosen it, pull up, and stick it in there. Make sure it's nice and tight. This is too loose, so just tighten a little bit to where it's a little bit tighter. Then what I do is put a little wax in there for lubrication. And now we're going to be ready to cut. Now if my sprue was on the outside of the ring, like I showed you for this example, let's say this was in silver, I would simply cut it off like this. Now, since ours is on the inside, we're going to have to do a little bit of a different approach. So undo this, put it through here, and then do that same process again. Retighten a little bit. We already lubricated, so we're good to go. So now you can see I can get in here and cut off the sprue. So here we go. Remember, straight up and down, slow and steady. Let's hope we don't break a saw blade. And you just follow the curvature of the ring. And just be careful where your fingers are, because many times you might cut through and the saw blade keeps going and you do a little bit of slice in your finger. We want to try and avoid that. You can see it's nearing the end. So there's one side down. Now we're going to do the other. So I'm actually going to switch out my files, because these are the ones I use for wax. These are the ones I use for metal. So generally you don't want to mix, because if you use your metal files for the wax, you can get little slivers of silver or gold in the wax, which might not be the best idea. So I'm going to cover these, put them away, and now I'm going to use these. So these actually have a pretty fine, they're not too coarse. So let's see how far we can get polishing the inside. So depending on the inside shape of the ring or different parts of the ring that you'll be filing depends on which file you want to use. So for this ring, you need something with a curve. So generally we're going to do a half round file, which one side's flat, one side's round. So this one, using the rounds on the inside, you can see you can really get in there. You don't want to use this one because if there's no curved side, and these are some other flat ones. This one you could use, but it's a little bit difficult. It doesn't have as much surface area. So this is the one that's going to be the best fit. So I'll start with this. If I don't really think I'm making a lot of headway with this one, I'm going to jump to this one. So now we're going to try filing this down to make it smooth. So we actually are making some pretty decent headway. So this is just one of the ways that you can file down the sprue and polish the ring. And I'll show you for the other sprue that we cut, I'll show you the other way, which is the way I normally use. But it's good to know this way, especially if you're just starting out. This is the way that you're going to be polishing your sprues. So the inside actually is looking pretty smooth. You can't really tell that there is a sprue there, but now we still have the little tip there and the little tip there. So we just angle it and keep going just until it kind of feels like it's blended right down. Switch sides. There we go. So you can see, you can't even tell that there was a sprue there. Now the texture, you can still see the filing marks a little bit, and that's where sandpaper comes in handy. So you'll want to use some sandpaper. I usually use 280 first, which might actually be too coarse for this. So you might want to start with a 400 and then a 600. Just for time purposes, I won't go into it, but I do want to show you the other way to polish down a sprue. So at this stage, I have a magnetic polisher, and that's how I polish most of my pieces. For you, since you're just starting out, you'll probably want to take it to a jeweler and ask if they can polish it for you, because you might not have these tools quite yet. There's also a steel shot tumbler, and there's also manual polishing wheels, which are also very common. So each one gives a slightly different finish as well. But for my work, it's textural. My work does best in the magnetic tumbler. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of remove these file lines that you still see here from our manual filing with this. Once it's done, I'm going to pop it into the magnetic tumbler. So to polish the inside, what I like to use is the micromotor, which I have a Nakanishi here. But I think this will come later on if you really start to get into jewelry making. You'll want to get a flex shaft or a micromotor to help you with a lot of different things that will come in handy when making jewelry. So these are some polishing wheels. These are the ones I like to use, and they're different coarseness. So the blue is the coarsest, then the black, and then the brown, it starts to be more shiny polishing, and the green gives it that extra fine shine. So these I've already worked down to be small. They started off at, this size. So as I kept grinding, they got smaller, which comes in handy for us since I'm gonna have to go on the inside. So this is actually a really good size. And they also have different shapes. There's just so many different tools, bits, motors, anything that you can imagine for jewelry making. So again, once you start getting into jewelry making a bit more, that's when I think you should start to explore different things that will help make making jewelry easier. So for this, I'm going to take out this drill bit and put in this one. So this is a quick change hand piece, which really comes in handy, and this one's extra quiet. So using this, I'm going to go inside. So you can see this is the sprue. I'm not going to touch this one. Oh, sorry, this is the one we already did. I'm not going to touch this one, but I am going to touch this one. So just kind of get in there, slowly work it down. Now, don't follow my lead. You're definitely going to want to wear a mask when doing this, especially if you're doing more than one sprue. Now I'm going to show you our progress. So this is the side that we filed down using a jeweler's file. And this is the side that I just polished down using this polishing wheel. So you can see it's pretty smooth actually. And what I also noticed is this texture is a little bit rough. What's also nice is that you can either use a file, you can use sandpaper. For me, I'm just going to use this to quickly just kind of go over this gently just to smooth it out a little bit so it's not too harsh. Again, this really isn't doing too much to the texture. It's just getting those kind of sharper areas, bringing those down a little bit so that they're not painful. So the texture is definitely still there. I'm going to get rid of that guy. So one last thing I'm going to do is just make sure the inside of this shank is as smooth as possible. So I'm just going to kind of run it around, make sure there's no little lines or anything before I throw it in the magnetic tumbler. Again, don't follow my lead. You're going to want to wear a mask. Sorry. This is the area that was the manual filing that we did. I'm just polishing it a little bit so it's nice and smooth. Getting rid of those file marks. And sometimes there's just other marks from when it was cast. Little pieces of flashing is what they call it. You just need to smooth it out a little bit. So now I'm just doing the rim, just to make sure it's nice and comfortable. So I'm going to pop this guy into the magnetic tumbler, which is right here. So this is meant for about 2 to 3 rings at a time. Once you get into jewelry making, this is a really good investment, in my opinion, especially if you have textural work. Something like this costs a few $100s. And just kind of helps with polishing. So you can see this is the raw casting. The inside's shiny, the outside's still matte. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like when it comes out. Pop that in, put maybe 1 or 2 drops. I use Dawn soap. Turn it on. I'd say about 15 minutes. And it takes a little bit to kind of get going. But soon the ring will be kind of rotating around in a circle, and you can see the tiny little pins, which are controlled by the magnet underneath. And those are what are going to be polishing the piece. And now you can see the speeds kind of knocking up. You can see the ring moving about. So about 10-15 minutes, I'll pull it out. Alright, so the ring's finished. Let's take it out and see how it looks. And now you have a shiny ring. You can really see the texture, which is really nice. Nice smooth inside. Just gotta dry it off thoroughly. And there you go. There's your ring.